Hi everyone, it's Bethany
and Mary
from Women's March, Minnesota. We are excited to be here with Cair, Minnesota today. We're going to give it a few minutes for people to join this live video, and then Mary will be conducting an interview with Jaylani from Cair. And we've got lots of questions, lots of information to share. We also want to encourage you to ask any questions you may have. So I will be monitoring the live feed. If you have any questions or any thoughts, please don't hesitate to ask. We'll get to them towards the end of this video. But we're excited to be here. We think this is a really important organization that we're excited to be partnering with and spotlighting. So with that, I'm going to flip the camera around.
I'm sharing it right now. Oh, yeah, 10 people already. All right.
Can you introduce yourself for us?
My name is Jaylani Hussein. I'm the Executive Director for Cair Minnesota, the Council on American Islamic Relations. I am the Executive Director at Cair, but a lot of people probably want to know where I came from. I am originally from Somalia. I came to Minnesota in 1993 when I was about 10 years old. And today I'm as Minnesotan as they get, according to me at least. But I'm really honored to be serving in this position in this critical time. And I'm looking forward to having a conversation with many of you today on this Facebook Live. Cair Minnesota was established in 2007. It's part of a national organization with 35 chapters across the United States. It's the largest American civil rights and civil liberty organization. We are on the front lines of challenging Islamophobia, bigotry, defending civil rights, and building coalitions to promote inclusion, and also educating people about Islam and Muslims to enhance the understanding of Islam and Muslims. So really honored that Women's March Minnesota chose us to be on the spotlight today, and I look forward again to talking to you more about the work that we do. Keep going.
So tell us a bit about, is there something specific about Cair Minnesota that differs from Cair that's across the...
Yeah, so Cair Minnesota is, the way our Cair's chapters work is we have a national office in DC, and each state has its own chapter or multiple chapters depending on how large the state is. So in Minnesota we have the Minnesota chapter. We're all independent organizations, but we have an affiliation with our national office. Cair Minnesota was really started after there was a number of incidents that happened where Muslims were being fired from jobs because of their religious dress, as well as also requesting for prayer accommodations, among other things. And so in 2007, when Cair's chapter opened, it focused on those types of cases. But Cair's work is multifaceted. We focus on three primary areas. One, to enhance the understanding of Islam and Muslims through education. So we actually give presentations across the state of Minnesota to public, private organizations, to state organizations, to faith communities and communities across, and we provide a number of presentations from a basic Islam 101 presentation to even conversations about Islamophobia, about religious accommodation in schools, at work. And so that is a major part of our work. So we do a lot of education, even though we're an advocacy and a civil rights organization. We do spend a third of our work, if not more, educating people and groups about Islam and Muslims. The second thing that we do is we actually promote justice through our civil rights work. And at Cair Minnesota, we have 2 full-time lawyers, and they're currently handling over 200 cases a year. In the last year, 240 to 260 cases that we handle. And then lastly, the area that we focus on is educating American Muslims, and here in Minnesota, Muslims in Minnesota, about their rights in different formats through Know Your Rights presentations, and at times the different issues that come up that we need to provide education. So for example, with the recent executive order, the Muslim ban, We have been on the front lines of educating Muslims from both here in the Twin Cities to greater Minnesota. And this even Friday, I'll be at Wilmer, where I'll be talking to the community there. And what we do, I mean, for example, we have Know Your Rights information that we offer for Muslim youth at school. This is an area that we have a tremendous concern, especially with bullying. After the election, we had almost, I would say, close to maybe 20 plus incidents, and most of those incidents were from school-related bullying of young Muslim women who had their hijab pulled. We had even a horrible incident that was averted at a school where a 6th grader brought an air pistol gun and was attempting to actually shoot a 3rd grader, a Muslim 3rd grader. Thank God the bus driver was alertive and was able to stop that from happening. So we provide these pamphlets and a presentation to the Muslim youth. We also do provide just a general Know Your Rights information to adults on different things. And so this pamphlet that we offer after our presentations kind of talks about all of the things that people typically need to know, knowing their right as a student, knowing their right when they're faced with discrimination at a job, knowing your rights as an employee, contact information for all the CAIR chapters. You might get stuck somewhere in another state. You want to be able to at least have contact to all the other CAIR chapters, how to write a letter to the editor, communication with the Congress, get involved locally, react to hate crimes. And then also law enforcement, and including, for example, if you're on a no-fly list, what you should do, and how can CAIR help you. We also have Know Your Rights as airline passenger. So these are little reminders. Our presentation covers all of these things, but when people often sometimes forget, and so these are little pocket guide, which is kind of nice, can be a great way for people to remember what their rights are. And we do have if you were pulled by a police officer, what should you be doing, and what are your rights when you're contacted by law enforcement, but also when you're in a car and stopped by police. One of the other areas in the Muslim community we face a great deal of concern, as well as we've concern about abuse, and this has been well documented across the United States for a long time, is the interviews by the FBI. And so we have provided we have a small version of this card, but Know Your Rights information for the FBI. So if the FBI ever come to your house, what you should do and how can CAIR represent you. And so we provide this information to community members as well. And then finally, we even provide trainings to centers, Islamic centers and mosques. And this is a guide that we have developed after, again, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, where we've noticed an increased attack on mosques across the country. In 2015, we had almost 75 to 85 incidents across the country where mosques were attacked, and including here in Minnesota. This is a safety guide that we provide, and we do that kind of training to make sure that communities are well aware. So a large part of our work is educating people. We believe even in our cases, when we settle cases, we make it an effort to make sure that education is a part of our settlement, to make sure that we don't see these things repeating or happening. We know a lot of times that is the leading cause for individuals to discriminate against people. So I'll give you an example. Let's say a young Somali man was working at employment, and he's been working there for 6 months, and he shows up at 6 o'clock in the morning every day. And he's been allowed to pray at work, but 6 months later he shows up at 6 o'clock and he tells his manager, I have to pray now because my prayer schedule has changed, and now it's 6 in the morning when the sun rises at, which typically happens. The sun changes throughout the year when it is up and when it's down. So, and the manager doesn't know that, so they fire the person, this gentleman. And we get to step in, and obviously we assert the rights of this individual, but at the same time we make sure that the company and other companies are educated about the change in prayer times, for example, which is sometimes creates a great deal of confusion. But also, we advocate and we find areas where there's need for policies so that we address it from a systematic level. So, for example, a few years back, a Muslim woman was detained at the Hennepin County Sheriff's detention center, and she had a hijab on, and the county did not have a policy on how to deal with that. So after dealing with her case and making sure that her rights were asserted, We also worked with the Hennepin County to create a policy, and that policy now has been put out to the 87 counties in Minnesota, and many of them have adopted, and we're still working through that process. So we are an organization also that has the ability to connect with many of the Muslim community. And for the past 7 years, now we're celebrating our 10th year of service, a decade of service here in Minnesota. And of our biggest accomplishments, I would say, is that relationship that we have built with many different interfaith communities across the state, our ability to empower American Muslims through their work. But we feel as we're growing now that the challenges are also growing. And that's why right now we're faced with a very unique time in history. And partly the main reason is for the first time, at least that we can know now, that there has been an active organizing against Muslims in the United States for the past 8 years. That has led to the fear that many people are seeing. Many of you heard about anti-Muslim speakers coming to Minnesota and speaking at different small communities across the state. That is part of that organizing. These individuals don't come uninvited. They're actually, most of them come invited by groups who have organized in a way to organize against Muslims. So the policies that we're seeing today are not coming out of a vacuum. They're actually coming off of this well-established Islamophobia network that's both national and local, who have been pushing anti-Muslim policies and ideas, and now we're seeing those policies and ideas actually being implemented at the highest office, the president's office, and the people that the president has surrounded himself, including the recent resigned General Flynn, who called Muslims a cancer or Islam a cancer. He's not the only one who has been fueled through this Islamophobic network, but there are many others who have been misinformed, misguided about what's happening.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Muslim community in Minnesota?
So the Muslim community in Minnesota is a very diverse community. It's a community that also has deep history in Minnesota. And a lot of people are unaware of this. Muslims are well established in the Midwest, and actually historically we have the most identifiable historically Muslim community in the country here, dating back to the early 1800s, to the late 1800s, and more evidently in the early 1900s, where we have the oldest two mosques known to this country, historically known to this country. One in Ross, North Dakota, interesting, which is close to Minot, and then one that's still standing today. It's called the Mother Mosque in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And if you go to the Minnesota Historical Society, you'll actually find pictures of Muslim salesmen who were here in Minnesota in the 1800s. And interesting enough, that community at that period, which is almost 100 and 150 years ago, that community was predominantly Lebanese and Syrians. Today, 100 years later, where generations of Syrians live in Minnesota and in this area, they're not being allowed to come to the United States, ironically. But in the 1960s, we saw an increase of South Asian when they were able to come. Many of those individuals from South Asia, from India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, for example, many of them were international students. So they're today your doctors, your engineers. And then in the 90s, you started to see obviously the East Africans from Somalia, from Ethiopia, and then also a Bosnian community that many people don't even know because they just look like white people. So the Minnesota Muslim community is a very diverse community. Perhaps the largest segment is from the Somali community, which are very visible, and they don't all live in the Twin Cities. Actually, a large percent of the population lives in greater Minnesota, so from Wilmer, from Faribault to Owatonna, to Winona, to Marshall, to Rochester, to Duluth, Moorhead, and even as small as places, Pelican Rapid, Minnesota. There's a large presence of these communities. It's very interesting, actually, if you go to, for example, Faribault, you'll walk into the downtown Main Street and you almost feel like it's out of a movie screen, because you just see an old downtown and you see all these Muslim Somali women walking around, and it kind of takes you back a little bit, because most people think that the majority of the Muslim community lives in the Twin Cities area. And that also is critical for this community. And this is a growing community. A lot of people also assume that many of the community members here are new arrivals, which is true. Majority are, but the number is actually across the United States. 60% of the Muslims were born here, and then also here, even in Minnesota, within the Somali community, now I think the numbers is 40% of the Somali community are actually born here. So it's a young generation that is growing up in this climate right now.
So how what was the impact on the Muslim community in Minnesota of the rhetoric, the heightened rhetoric of the election campaign, and then with the beginning of the new administration?
I would say, I think the 2015 and specifically 2016, the campaign specifically targeted, especially in the Republican Party, specifically targeted the Muslim community. And anytime something happened, people were pointing fingers at specifically the Somali community. President Trump, when he made his two comments about Minnesota, he particularly targeted the Somali community as a community that shouldn't be allowed to come. And then even when his visit here, and he had a conversation at the airport, specifically again targeted the Somali community as an unwanted immigrant population. And contrary to any of the message that he had, the Somali community today is really part of the growth of the economy of the state of Minnesota, from reviving, as I mentioned to you, small towns, main streets, which have died literally, to corridors in Minneapolis that have long historically been blighted, that have been revived by both the Latino population and the Somali population. For example, Lake Street is a great example. In many other communities, Cedar Riverside, which today are really a robust economic districts because of these new immigrants. And the Somali community in particular are very entrepreneurial spirits. Even some people they lose money, but they still continue to offer their businesses because they believe in the idea of entrepreneurship. Since the election, before the election, there was already growing anti-Muslim incidents. There's been a number of high-profile incidents that many people in Minnesota heard about, of a young Muslim woman, Asma Jama, who was physically assaulted not that long ago and at an Applebee's. But then since then, we've had other incidents. For example, 5 young men who were shot by this one gentleman who we believe targeted them for their faith. And 2 of them were struck, and the trial for that case is coming up very shortly. We've had other incidents of threats. We've had, even our office has received threats, numerous of threats. And so we see right now the tension growing. We know for sure that those communities who are in greater Minnesota oftentimes jobs or discrimination, employer discrimination, school issues, you name it. And so, but at the same time, to respond, being led by the faith communities, but now also social justice communities. And I want to give a shout out to the Unite Cloud out there in St. Cloud, who are making a tremendous impact in uplifting the conversations and trying to create an inclusive community there in St. Cloud. So things are starting to change, and people are starting to recognize what is happening around them. The one thing that we know is, especially in anti-Muslim organizing, traditionally it has been an older population that is more involved in this type of work. But yet, I think it's something that has been growing, and now with the election of President Trump, we're starting to see the policies that are impacting this community.
Can we talk specifically about the executive order banning immigrants and refugees? How did that travel ban affect individuals and families from your community in Minnesota?
So, we knew such a ban would come because President Trump made it very clear in his campaign trail that he was going to shut down Muslims from coming to the United States, according to him. And when this executive order came, that's exactly what we perceived it to be. One, it created a tremendous chaos. The way the language was written in the order, and then the fact of the matter, it stopped refugees coming from Syria. It cut down half of all of the refugees that were already allowed and already were planning to come this year, close to 100,000, cut down to 60,000 of them cut off, and already we had, I think, 30,000 that came. And it created tremendous chaos. Immediately, the Muslim community felt targeted. They felt that that this was this is bigger than just the presidential order, that there are more to come. And since then, our office has been overwhelmed with calls. We've actually gotten more calls from those who have green cards and citizens than those who are in the process of getting their citizenship or getting their green card. So, and many people are concerned. The first calls that I got were a local imam who called me after he had a lecture for Muslim women, and a few of them were crying, saying that the presidential order is going to remove and strip our green cards. And these people are here in Minnesota. So misinformation, tremendous chaos, and fear, and that has now escalated to the point we're seeing a number of Somali families literally walking from Minnesota to the Canadian border in northern part of Minnesota, and this is not the time to be walking in anywhere in Minnesota, but to be even walking in northern Minnesota, that's putting a tremendous risk at someone's life. And that's what's happening. People are extremely frustrated, people are fearful, and this is affecting not only just the community itself, but it's not just affecting the adults, it's affecting also the kids. I had an opportunity to go to a couple of schools and talk to Somali kids, and they were all concerned, what's going to happen to me? And everybody now is concerned, if they were not a citizen, will they be allowed to become citizens? Will their citizenship be delayed? We've had also U.S. citizens who were part of most people know the pre-check program, which expedites your travel. There is a certain version of that called Global Entry Program, which also expedites your travel when you're coming into the country. And we've heard Muslims are being removed from the 7 countries being removed from that program. So it has affected the entire community. And there's a great deal of fear that still exists today that's driving people who have, their status may not be complete, that they're thinking about even leaving the country.
And so what is CAIR doing to support people?
So, we obviously have been in the middle of all of this. One, to trying to provide a sense of calm to the community as best as possible, to educate people about what their rights are. We have made an extra effort to reach out to the communities and provide Know Your Rights trainings, bring along experts in immigration, lawyers who specialize in immigration law, which they themselves have categorized this ban as a way to create chaos and to create a great deal of fear. Immigration law is already a very complex law, and it just became even more complex with this presidential order. And so we are right now at the moment we're providing Know Your Rights trainings to local communities here, communities in Greater Minnesota. We're also planning to hold legal clinics here. These clinics are brief legal advices for individuals who have any issues specifically with immigration. We're planning to hold a number of those this year across the state and as well here in the Twin Cities. We're also creating a new program to drive citizenship. We believe that there's 60,000 plus Minnesotans who are actually have meet the requirements to become citizens but have yet to apply. And so we're going to be doing citizenship drives. We're also preparing for other presidential orders that may attack this community. We know we're hearing of others. So we're on the front lines. We are doing this not alone. We're working with our partners in the Immigrant Law Center, the American Youth Center, the law schools here here in Minnesota, and many other entities that we've historically worked with. We're bringing people to the table to talk about how we can be very supportive. So we're not doing only direct services, but we're also reaching out to our partners to help us be able to access and provide more resources to the community.
And so now that there is this temporary stay on the ban, what are you anticipating is going to happen, and how are you preparing the community for that? So
right now our message has been very clear to those people who have visas, who are in these position of limbos to make their way here. We don't know how long this issue is going to exist, how long this period is going to exist, and what other presidential order may come. So, and also we've had a number of, actually majority of the people who have been also concerned are people who are from other Muslim majority countries that are not named in the presidential order, and the current presidential order actually allows for additions at any moment. So there's been a great fear in that sense. So we're asking people to always check with us if they have to make they have to make any travels anytime soon, especially for those people who are not citizens, who are not green card holders. So right now we're trying to provide as much information as possible, either online, through social media, through information, and through those kind of discussions.
And is there anything that you would say that Minnesotans can do to help in this situation?
So I would say right now we've received tons of support, and that's been probably the silver lining of this entire what's happened. We've had support from people all over Minnesota, from a woman just walking in last week and bringing us a bread and a donation. We've had now a surge of our volunteers, almost 250 new volunteers who are interested in getting involved. But we've been working on how do we address the issue of Islamophobia? How do we address the issue of hate? How do we build mobilize people to resist these types of aggressions that lead to the policies, that lead to the fragmentation that we live in today? And so we have actually come up with 13 or different ideas, ways that people can get involved. And so we have a kickoff event to announce these ideas and to kind of use that momentum of an event to kind of launch this effort, and it will be on Saturday, March 25th at the O'Shaughnessy Theater. You can find all of the information about this event online. It's not going to be a sit-down type of an event. There's going to be, it's going to be a very lively event. It's going to be a very engaging event, and we do also have a powerful lineup of speakers from local leaders like Nakima Levy-Pounds, Representative Ilhan Omar, and others. And then we have national speakers, including a family that many people became very famously known to, a Muslim family, the Khizr Khan family, who were well heard about their story and their sacrifice of their son for the United States. And so he'll be here, as well as also an expert on Islam and Muslims in the country, perhaps one of the top experts, Dalia Mujahid, who is well known for her research and the books that she's authored. And we'll have different other speakers and entertainers as well that will be here. So this event we're going to use as a way to launch this campaign. What is in this campaign? I mean, we want to give people, wherever you're at in Minnesota, simple ways you can get involved. Certain people have different level of time commitments, but one of the easiest ways we've actually been recommending people is to amplify, to change the narrative. What does that mean? That means you go on your social media platform and you personalize a story or an experience or something you like about the communities that are being targeted today, and you make that known to your community. You make that known to your circle of friends. And anytime there's an incident that happens, you're there to provide a positive information to the community, to let not fear be the overwhelming arch of what's happening. And so amplify, change the narrative is one of the things. We also know there are a lot of people out there say, I'm more hungry than that. I want to be advocate. I want to do something. I want to speak about these topics. I want to hold the conversation in my community. And so we're creating an advocate program where you will be trained and we'll provide you as much information as possible to talk about Islamophobia, to talk about what's happening. And to be an expert in your area, as well as also to host conversation. This is a critical time right now in our country where we cannot avoid those who voted for Donald Trump, for example. We can't avoid those who believe that they disagree. We have to come together. We have to reach other across the aisles and talk to each other because we agree on a lot of things. We're Americans after all. And this is not the time to create a greater division by going on only and speaking to people who are like-minded with us. So part of that hosting conversation is that there are many things. We want to bring the creative art people together and create something positive that uplifts. We want to bring together people who want to march and protest. And actually we have a very creative march that we would like to do with some people that includes, for example, decorating the entire downtown Minneapolis' most important gateways on a busy weekday evening drive home, and instead of just protesting and whatever, but actually provide facts. Hold large boards that have facts of information, and we can start having conversations. One of the biggest messages that's out there today that is creating fear in the Muslim community, that's creating Islamophobia, is the issue of Muslims are a threat to America, that Muslims are danger, and terrorism is a Muslim thing. The reality is, when we flip the story, when we talk about the victims, today 99% of the people who are killed by terrorists across the world are Muslims. And we don't sympathize with the community that is actually being affected by terrorism. Instead, we sympathize and we give power to these terrorists. And so by switching the narrative and by providing different information, we can then start to create a more inclusive society. And then finally, education is a big part of what we can do. This country is not new to Islam. It was founded with Muslims in the room. I mean, from the conversations of the founding fathers, had relationships with Muslims in Europe. There's letters to prove that. Thomas Jefferson had a Quran in his study. Even he was accused of being the first Muslim president, secret Muslim president, before President Obama. And so the idea that we are this religion and this faith is new and it's here to change. This is an old story that Catholics went through, Jewish Americans went through, and today Muslims are at the front line. So this event's a great event. I hope all of you can attend there. There is a fee, a ticket fee, but we are also offering scholarships for people who can't. And I'm really encouraging people from Great Minnesota to show up and to be part of this conversation as well.
Where can people find more information on that event,
So
the date and the time?
I would say for all of those information, I would encourage you to learn about our website and our Facebook page. Those are places where we provided tons of information. So go to our website. It's www.cairmn.com. So Cair as CAIRMN.com. And our Facebook page is Cair Minnesota, CAR Minnesota. And so if you find us up, like our Facebook page, you'll be able to follow up. If you go to the Facebook page, you can also go to the events, and that event is right on there. And that's a way to know what's happening in this community. That's a way we can respond. Even one of those ideas that we're hoping for people to get involved in is, for example, a response team, to hate incidents in our community. There's a lot of people who want to do that. And so, for example, this past week we had an Asian family that was attacked at their home with, unfortunate statement on their garage. So if we had a team like this, we could immediately respond, call the family, see what they wanted. We could be supportive and immediately respond to them. So having these efforts, we can be a resilient community, we can resist, and we can educate, and we can build an inclusive society. And that's really what we're trying to do here at Cair.
We hear on the news talk about ICE rounding up illegal immigrants and deporting them. Is your community feeling that threat, and what is Cair doing?
Absolutely. I spoke to. I was in Rochester last Friday. Spoke to the community there. I've been across Faribault and here in the Twin Cities, and I'm hearing rumors of, well, what happens if you get a petty crime, or if you, for example, didn't pay unpaid tickets? Is that a reason for people being deported? And for example, Somalia, you can't actually even deport people to Somalia. Somalia does not have the country is improving. They had a new president today, recently. They just hired a new president that was recently elected last week, but it's still not a functioning government. So, there's a lot of challenges. So nobody can actually be deported to Somalia, but yet people are afraid of that. Possibly being deported, and so that concern is very legitimate. We've heard now a number of stories that have come to us where there is an ICE officer that is walking with a police officer in Minneapolis at the light rail. And so a lot of allies are wondering how you can be supportive, how you can help. I think it's critical for us to be aware of what's happening. One thing is, if there are a rumor and it's not 100% certified, do not amplify rumors, because we only create more fear in the community. People hear about, oh, this is what's happening, and then all of a sudden now it's real because 20 people or 30 people are sharing or talking about it. So I think verifying information is critical and important. And I think we know how the systems work. And so we have to be able to understand how to be able to protect the communities from the system rather than incidents of just and for the last 8 years, actually 2 million or millions of people have been deported from this country. So this is not new, but now we are obviously concerned about people who are going to be deported for anything, and so the community is definitely concerned, and that's why I think majority of the people who are now tracking their way to Canada in this cold winter is perhaps because of the fear that they may be deported or held until they're deported.
And I'm wondering if you are anticipating any bills coming in at the state level that you are concerned about, and that maybe there are things that people could do about those bills.
Yeah, so when it comes to bills at the state, Minnesota, there's a number of bills that we're generally supporting. I know today there's going to be an event, a protest or a rally at the Capitol in opposition of the protest bill, the bill to kind of pretty much take away that right and punish people for protesting. But there are other bills that are out there that we're generally supporting. But right now our radar is actually more focused on bills that may be introduced. And unfortunately, that's not very helpful for many of you today, but we are concerned about bills that will be produced to attack Muslim community. There was a bill yesterday that was defeated in South Dakota, our neighbors here on the west, and that bill specifically targeted my organization, Cair. We don't even have a chapter in South Dakota, but the bill specifically said that every entity of the government should cut ties with our organization, and that has been happening, and that similar bill is being pushed in Mississippi and some other states. So there are going to be these bills that specifically target the Muslim community, and so right now we're on the more focused on just being very watchful of those types of bills being introduced. We know last year there was a bill introduced by Senator Brown in St. Cloud that said the United States government is the United States government, but indirectly was targeting the Muslim community. And so we're concerned about those types of bills at the moment, but we're as a civil rights organization, we're in support of the Black Lives Matter movements, the social justice groups that are pushing against the several of the bills that have been proposed, and also we're in support of making sure that there are more investment to minority communities, targeted communities, specifically for economic and social justice issues. So there are other bills that we need to get around that, and I think take action Minnesota, and there are others who are putting a greater effort to educate people about the bills. But right now we're a little bit overwhelmed, to be honest with you, and we're right now just hoping that there are no bill introduced that we have to rally people around against. But we are concerned that will happen. And typically, as I mentioned earlier, that the Islamophobia network is not just local, it's national. So one of the things they do is they test these bills in states where there's less, they're more than likely to have less opposition because there's not that many Muslims, or the Muslim population is small. And once they push those and it becomes law, then they go to the bigger states. So, but right now we just have to keep our ears out, and I would encourage everybody, the best way to hear about what's happening, you can sign up to our e-newsletter, but I think also just liking our Facebook page, following what's happening, because we update that on an everyday basis, and we educate people through that.
And do you have a section on your website where you specifically talk about bills that people should be aware of and should write letters about?
Yes, so if we have a bill or any information, we will actually put that out as an action alert. So one thing we do is, if you are part of our e-newsletter, you'll get that. Otherwise, if you are one of our friends on our Facebook, you'll also get that message on there, and we'll provide information on that. So 3 things that we're kind of encouraging people to do. One is become a volunteer. What does that mean? That means whatever time you can offer, whatever skills you can offer, would be great to benefit from that. And actually, that's important for a lot of allies. You have to put yourself in front, be part of the team that's on the front lines of challenging hate, whether it's helping us with an event, or creating an event, or being a supportive part of the efforts that we do here at the office. That is something we need now, and we are building that database, and we'll be reaching out to many of our volunteers with ideas. And then also we need donations. We anticipate that this work is not going to end after we defeat the executive order. It will continue for a long to come. So we're asking for people to donate. And what does that look like? I mean, you should be donating to a lot of these great organizations that already exist. But we're asking for people to donate, you know, the $50, the $100, whatever you can. And if you're very fortunate to have more money, make that an impact as well. So donate, and you can find all of our information to donate on our Facebook page as well as online. So volunteer, donate is, I think, 2 critical points right now. And then again, you know, a simple thing is just to follow us on Facebook, just that so you know what's happening, because I think that's critical.
And where can people get hold of your literature, your pamphlets, your brochures?
So if you contact our office and you need information to share with your community, or you're having an event, please just call our office, 612-206-3360. And you can, again, if you go to our website, you'll find all of our information there. You should be able to get all of that information to you. And if you want to print your own, we can do that. We can send you PDF versions of them, or we can get you the hard copies of the things that we have. And so I know we've had a lot of calls and emails about what other, you know, how can we bring CAIR representative to talk to our community, to talk to our office, to talk to our school. And so we do that as well. We do presentations, and that a lot of times is a great way not only to educate a group of people, but also to build those relationships as well. And so education is the key to help people, you know, overcome a lot of the misinformations, the fake news, the alternative facts that people are assuming these days. And so hosting a conversation or hosting CAIR is critical. So if you go to our website, you can also find a slider that says training, and you can click on the training, and you can submit a form, and we'd be more than happy to come to your community, to your school, to your employer, and provide that training. If there's a conference coming up that you attend and you would like us to be part of that as well, that's something we do as well.
I think we pretty much covered
Thank
it.
you.
So
Yes,
thank you
and we'll
very,
be
very
sharing
much.
the links to
Okay.
all of those items on our page and on our website. So if you're looking to find more information on CAIR Minnesota and how you can get involved, as well as how you can attend the event, please do go to our Facebook page and go to our website later today, and we will have those links available for you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks,
All
Jelani.
right, thank you.